So for a while now, actually for about 6 weeks, we've been in a series that we've called Peniel Goes to the Movies, and we've been talking about different movies, and I really love the challenge of it. It's really hard to do. Take a movie and try and pull out the themes that are really biblical and talk about how they tie into our lives today. And so for the last few weeks, we've been going through a movie called The Shack, and this is controversial. Oh my goodness, just go Google it. You will just be stunned by how many Christians hate this movie. They can't stand it, and I get it. I know what the concerns are, but there are spiritual themes that are present in this movie that are so important that I felt like we have to talk about it. And, we're just going to focus on the parts of it that are really, really good. And we're really going to cover that today. For those of you who aren't unfamiliar, by the way, you can watch it on Netflix. It's on Netflix now. So if you want to watch The Shack, if you've never seen it, go watch it on Netflix. You can make your own decision about the parts that, yep, I get why there's controversy, but I also see the value in it. So it's the story of this guy, Mackenzie. We've been talking about him for the last few weeks. And so he has his family, and one time he goes camping with his family, not his wife, but the kids, and they're out at the campground, and the oldest two kids are out in a canoe in the lake, and they're screwing around, and they tip the canoe over. And his oldest son is trapped under the water. And so the only way to save him is for Mackenzie to dive into the water, swim out, and pull his son ashore and give him CPR. And he saves his son's life. Unfortunately, while he's out there, his youngest daughter, who is sitting at the picnic table at the campsite, is left alone. And when he comes back from the water, she's gone. They never find her. Instead, eventually, after a massive manhunt up in the mountains, they find this old shack. And in the shack, they find her dress and some blood. And so everybody knows what happened. But they never find her body, and they never find the killer. And Mackenzie, of course, is thrown into a world of pain. As a matter of fact, you will probably understand this, and most of you will. If not, you probably will at some point. Time keeps moving, but he doesn't. He gets stuck right there. Right there. He's stuck. Time keeps moving. But he's stuck in a world from that moment on of pain and guilt and shame and despair as time keeps moving on. And it's one of the reasons why I think the movie has a really important message. Multiple, like I've said. And this is one of the big ones, is because the reality is right now in America, there are a lot of people stuck. There are a lot of people stuck. They've gotten stuck in their pain, and it's affecting their lives, and they don't realize or won't acknowledge that they're stuck at some point in their past. So I read the story this last week of a man who in his early 20s, his dad died. And he was the only child, and his mom was overwhelmed by the loss of her husband. So he had to do everything. And I don't know if you've been involved in what goes on in a funeral, but there are just 1,000 decisions you have to make. And it's just overwhelming. And so he had to do it alone while caring for his mom. And somebody asked him in the middle of it, how are you doing with your loss? And he says, I don't have time for it. I don't have time for it. Because he just had to get everything done. Unfortunately, he never made time for grieving the loss. And a year later, some person on a bike clips his side mirror, and he loses it. And he assaults the guy, totally out of character with him. Never had anything like this in his life. But that's what happens when you have a painful experience that you never deal with. It just goes inside, and it always comes out in an unhealthy way, always. And he was stuck and not addressing it and not dealing with it, and it came out in an assault charge. Way out of character for him. But that's what's happening in America today. There are a lot of people right now who've gotten hurt, who've lost something. You think about all we've lost as a nation over the last few years. And there are a lot of people stuck. And they're really stuck in their pain, and they don't know how to move it. The truth is, many of you sit here today, or you're watching online today, and you have deep wounds from your past that no one else can see, but you feel them. And you've not been able to move on from those, and you're stuck. So what's the solution for this? Well, as we finish up this series today, we're going to talk about this. What do you do when you feel stuck? When you have those moments of pain that happen in your life and and time moves forward, but you don't. How do you get back on track with that? So I want to ask you to open up your program. Inside, you'll find these notes. Welcome to those of you, of course, who are watching online. I want to ask you to get the notes from our website. If you're watching on YouTube, just go to our website at penielchurchlife.com, and the notes are right there, and you can grab them. So I want to encourage you to get them. I apologize for all of you who love to write and fill in all the blanks. You will not get to fill in all the blanks today. We're really just going to talk about two things today. The first thing is this. You have to learn how to watch for signs that you are getting stuck, or maybe you are stuck. You got to watch for these signs. Because there are always signs when you're getting stuck. Now, part of the controversy of the movie is that at one point in the movie, so after his daughter is dead, they can't find her body and they can't find the killer. And one day he goes out to the mailbox and there's a note. And the note, I know it's a dark picture, it says, "It's been a while. Mackenzie, it's been a while. I've missed you. I'll be at the shack next weekend if you want to get together." And it says, "Papa." And so it's an invitation back to the shack where they found the dress and the blood. And it's like, are you kidding me? He thinks that it's the killer. He thinks the killer's taunting him. So he gets a gun, he goes back out to that shack, he's going to confront the killer. But incredibly, in the movie, what actually happens is when he gets to the shack, it's transformed, and inside is not the killer, instead it's God. God meets him at the shack. And it is the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit. And they meet him there. It's interesting in the movie, and that's where a lot of the controversy lies, is that whole piece. But it's interesting in the movie when he says to God, "Why did you bring me back here?" God says, "Because here is where you got stuck. Here's where you got stuck." You know, my question as we get started today is, where did you get stuck? I have multiple stuck points in my life. The biggest one at the youngest age was 4th grade. I can remember it like it was just yesterday. My home growing up at the time was rough. My dad was a pretty violent alcoholic. He was not a nice man. There was a lot of stuff going on at home that was rough. And I had a teacher named Mr. Wall, and Mr. Wall's not a bad guy, okay? He's not a bad guy. He had no idea what was going on in my home. But that one day in school, and we used to do this, it was really cool back before, you had TVs in every room. When I was a kid, when I went to school, once in a while they'd bring you into the gymnasium and they'd put a film strip on. You got to watch a movie in the gym, and it was like a big deal. And so that day, they played The Jungle Book, the old Disney movie, The Jungle Book. And I loved it. And at the end, it's kind of sad, because the boy follows the girl into the village, if you've seen it, and he leaves behind the bear, and it's kind of sad, and the bear's sad, and I'm kind of sad as I'm watching this, and I'm sad. I'm actually start to cry a little bit at the end of the movie, which you don't cry in school. I mean, for goodness sakes. And I'm a little embarrassed by it, and I'm walking out of the gym with Mr. Wall standing next to me, my teacher. And I say to him, because I'm embarrassed and awkward, and what do you say? And I said to him, sometimes it's okay to cry. And he laughed at me. And again, he's not the bad guy here. He had no idea what was going on in my life, none. But that was one of the key sticking moments of my life. Because it reinforced what the message was that I was receiving at home, which was emotions are wrong. You don't feel anything. You don't express emotions. You don't feel emotions. Crying is never okay. I mean, these are all the messages from my Marine officer father. Emotions were the enemy to be destroyed like you would destroy an enemy overseas. And so this poor little 10, 11-year-old boy was just trying to get some help. And instead I got the same message that I was getting home. So I got stuck. I really got stuck. I wonder if you think through your life, if you will see moments where you got stuck. Because it's something someone said to you or didn't say. or something someone did to you, and you got stuck. It's one of the reasons why I love the movie so much. Now, the reality is, of course, you know this, right? Not everybody gets stuck. I mean, there are amazing stories in this world of people who have lived through incredible things, and they're not stuck. So why did I get stuck and other people don't get stuck? What's the difference? It's not pain. Some people think pain causes you to get stuck. That's not true. It's not pain. It's the messages that you internalize when you get hurt that determine whether or not you're stuck. So on your notes, here it is. When you get stuck, it's because in those moments of pain, we internalize the wrong messages. That's what causes you to get stuck. It's not the pain itself, because lots of people go through pain, they don't get stuck. It's whatever messages we internalize that determine whether or not we get stuck at that point or not. So many times what we do is we internalize a wrong message. I'm just unlovable, right? There are a lot of people. I read this horrible story. Listen to this. This woman wrote and said, I was 4 years old when a teenage boy molested me. When he warned me not to say anything, I went silent. But as I grew, the pain wouldn't stay quiet. It would shout when I made male friends. It laughed when I tried to feel pretty. And it told me I was unlovable. It wasn't the pain that got her stuck. It was the message that she put in her mind when she got hurt, that I am an unlovable person, and now she's stuck. For some of you, one of these messages sticks in your mind. I'm unworthy, I'm unwanted, I am unimportant. For me as a boy, the messages that got stuck were, it is wrong to feel anything. I've told you before, my hero when I was a child, one of my heroes was Spock from Star Trek, the old Spock, because he felt no emotions. And I thought that's what the pinnacle of manhood would be like. To feel nothing at all. It's wrong to feel, it's totally wrong to cry. It's wrong to have emotions. And it's certainly wrong to express your emotions in any way. And so, again, it's not what happens to you, it's the messages that you internalize that determine whether or not you're getting stuck. So, watch for the signs, letter A. Watch for the signs that you're getting stuck. And there are a lot of them. Common signs of you getting stuck or people around you that you love getting stuck, they have a hard time trusting people. You know anyone that has a hard time trusting people? Irritable, they have a very short fuse. It takes nothing to set them off, easily offended, constantly triggered. Health problems that are just constant with no underlying physiological cause. They're just always getting sick. It's often a sign of stuck. Anxiety. It's an epidemic in America, right? I mean, just constant hearing about anxiety. You hide the true you. For some of you, that is a description of you. Very few people know who you really are. They see the image of who you are. But you're stuck because you don't want to have the same experience you've had at some point in your life. Or you're always the one that leaves first. You know anyone like that in your life? They always leave first. Because they're not going to let you hurt them the way they were hurt. Or, this is the big one in America right now, addictions are out of control. Addictions are just consuming our nation. Whether it's addiction to technology, we just add new addictions constantly. Addictions to drugs, out of control. Alcohol, out of control. We are really on a path that is destructive. And all of those things, every addiction, video game addiction, you know how much is being written about this right now? There's just staggering amounts of time on video games or pornography. And all of those things are anesthesia. That's all they are. They are, I'm going to feel better for just a moment. But the problem, of course, is when you sober up, when the high wears off, when the game is over, are you better? Not better at all. So do you see signs that you're stuck? If you do, then the most important thing is that you acknowledge that you are stuck. It's like, I know it, I'm stuck today. There's something from my past that's painful and it's got me stuck. You acknowledge it, and then what you have to do is the hard work. You got to do this. You got to look for what those underlying messages are. It's the only way to get unstuck. And this is hard. I mean, it's easier just to have another drink or watch another TV show. That's easy. And we default to easy in our society. Go online and buy something else. I mean, that's a lot easier than actually hunting for the underlying messages that have caused you to get stuck. So we've talked about this many times in the past. This is a formula that has really, really, really positively changed my life, helped me with this so much. It's the ABC formula. Here's how emotions happen. Here's how we get stuck. Something happens, there's an activating factor, there's a belief that gets formed, and there's an emotional consequence. ABC, just got to remember your ABCs. So in the movie, the activating factor is his daughter's murdered. That's a pretty big activating factor. The belief that gets formed in his mind is, and this comes out in the movie later, I am responsible for her death. At one point he asks God, does she blame me? Does she blame me? Holy cow, can you imagine if you actually, I mean, it's impossible to try and imagine this, but if you could possibly conceive of what it's like to have a child kidnapped and murdered, and then you feel like you're responsible, what emotions are you going to feel? I mean, it's impossible to conceive, but despair, depression, shame, anger, I mean, just the list would be huge, right? Now, here's the problem. Your brain is the greatest supercomputer on the planet. There's nothing we can build that is even close to the power and capacity of your brain. Nothing. Nothing. God is amazing in the way he has built us. Your brain instantly forms beliefs. Instantly. Your beliefs form like that. They're not slow. I didn't have to think for 1 second. I spent no time thinking about my reaction to what Mr. Wall said to me as we walked out of the gym that day. None. 0 time. My brain immediately came to the belief that emotions and emotional expression are wrong. It was instant. I didn't sit and ponder it. My brain simply processed what I was experiencing in light of what was going on in my home, and I came to the conclusion. Your brain does it all the time instantly. That's why letter B is the hardest thing to catch. The only way to catch it is to embrace what God has given you when he gave you the gift of emotions. That's how you catch your wrong beliefs. It's ironic, right? You hear what I'm saying? The gift of emotions, I didn't view them as a gift. So for most of my life, so I was really in trouble. Because God gave you an amazing gift when he gave you emotions, because emotions are indicators of reality for you. You can't catch it at the belief level. Your brain's too fast, but you can catch it with the emotional level. And if you learn this, this is the key to the way out of stuck. You know, if you internalize a message like that, you're going to get stuck, right? Lots of pain. So what do you do? And I'm sorry, I didn't write this down. If you want to write it on the back, there's some space at the bottom in the back of your notes. But the key thing, and I've said it over and over again, is pay attention to your emotions. You've got to learn to pay attention to what you're feeling. What are you feeling? Are you feeling shame or guilt or anxiety or fear? You just got to pay attention to it. You're not judging it. You're not labeling it or dismissing. You're just paying attention to it. You've got to identify what you're feeling. I use, to this day, an emotions chart. If you Google emotions chart, you'll find tons of them like this. To this day. Now again, I'm at a serious disadvantage because of the way I was raised. Some of you may not need a chart. I mean, some of you are very, very emotionally intelligent. You know what you're feeling. I don't. I'm overwhelmed by my emotions. I just know I'm feeling something. I literally look at a chart like this, and I go through the columns, and I ask myself, what am I feeling? And so many times I'm surprised by the emotion that I'm feeling on the list. Just this week, I was going through, and I've talked the last few weeks about the fact that my mom is losing her mind, and it's incredibly painful to me. I shared with you a couple of weeks ago. This was the first birthday in 52 years of having birthdays on Earth, 52 years, the first one where my mom never even remembered that it was my birthday, and I never heard from my mom on my birthday. It was devastating, so painful, and I just feel so much sadness, and so I was just going through the sad column, and I got to the middle box. I know it's really small font, and the third one down, and it says lost, and that's how I felt, and I read that word, and I'm like, I feel lost. I don't know how to process this much sadness about the loss of a relationship with my mom. I don't know how to do this. I was stunned. I knew I was feeling something, and until I read that word, I didn't know what it was. That's why this chart's so powerful. It does this for me all the time, and they're free. You can just get them online. I have this printed off. I have it in my prayer journal. I've got it on my laptop. I've got it everywhere, because when I want to process something difficult, I often don't know what I'm feeling. So you pay attention to your emotions, you use an emotion chart, and then you look for the message that's creating that feeling. What do I believe about what I've gone through or what I'm going through? And that's what you got to get to. You got to get to the part where you can actually sort out what you're feeling, or identify the underlying belief that's creating the feeling. It may be that you're feeling responsible, or you may be feeling like it's never going to get better. It may be that you're feeling like you're to blame, or unlovable, or insignificant, or like you'll never be happy. Sometimes I know what's under that lost feeling for me is grief is scary to me because of, again, the way I was raised. And so it's like I'm standing at the beginning of a dark tunnel, and I can see in the tunnel, and all I can see is darkness, and I have no idea if there's going to be light again. And so it scares me. So you've got to figure that out. What's underneath the emotion that you're feeling? It's really, again, you follow these steps. Pay attention to your emotions, use a chart to figure out what you're feeling, and then try and identify what's the belief in your mind that's creating the feeling. And here's what you have to understand. If you get nothing from this message today, don't ever forget this. Your feelings buried alive never die. Feelings buried alive never die. Instead, what they do is they go inside and they start doing damage inside, internally. They just start hurting you in so many ways because God didn't give you the gift of emotions for you to ignore them, suppress them, deny them, or ignore them. He didn't give you the gift of emotions for you to do anything other than pay attention to them. So if you bury your feelings alive, they don't die. They begin to have a toxic impact on you internally, on your mind, on your body. You can see it in verses like this. Psalm 32. David said, when I refused to confess my sin, my body wasted away. I groaned all day long. And so there was this tremendous physical, emotional impact on him because he would not admit the truth of what he knew. You can try it. You can try it. I've tried it. It's devastating. You don't want to go down that path. It's a path that will lead you nowhere good. Now, the coolest thing about the way God made us, this is so cool. Here's how great our God is and how simple he's made this. Do you know the emotional centers of your brain, the amygdala, the emotional center of your brain, where it's firing? We can hook your brain up to machines and we can watch what's happening when you think about a painful event from your past. And we can see fire, fire, fire. It's firing in that part of your brain. And do you know what happens when you look at a chart like the one I just showed you and you finally name the emotion that you're feeling? Do you know what we watch in your brain, in the emotional centers of your brain? The firing activity goes down. Simply by naming the emotion, you calm the emotional center of your brain and engage the prefrontal, the thinking center of your brain. God wired your brain so that when you simply pay attention to what he's put inside of you with your emotions, it begins to bring healing. That's how he made your brain. So what do you think he wants you to do? Ignore how you feel? Deny how you feel? Suppress how you feel? No, move toward it. So, that's the first thing. Watch for signs that you suck. Yeah, that's good. Watch for signs that you're stuck. So, and for those of you who love to fill in notes, I'm sorry. We're skipping 2 and 3, and we're going right down to number 4, and this is the only thing we're going to talk about, because this is why I love the movie. This is why I love the movie. Love, love, love it. Is because because of the promise of God to heal our pain, and this is what he wants to do for all of us. if you've never read the life of Jesus in the Bible, you have to at some point. Just read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those 4 books of the Bible. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and just read about Jesus. And what will surprise you, and maybe not surprise you, but I remember at some point when I was reading through those books, it's just overwhelming how much of Jesus' time on earth was about one thing. It was about healing people. If you read those books, you will be overwhelmed by how much of what Jesus did was just about healing people. He would go from town to town and heal them, and he'd be tired, and he'd want to get away, and crowds would follow him, and he'd be like, well, forget my plans, I want to heal these people. And he'd be walking along with a purpose, and he'd see someone in pain, and he'd heal them. He healed and healed and healed and healed and healed, and then Jesus said, I'm only doing what I see my Father in heaven doing. So what does that tell you about God our Father? He's a healing God who has this huge heart for humanity, who cries when we cry and laughs when we laugh, who feels our emotions deeply, who wants so badly to heal our pain. This is one of the major themes. What I love so much about the movie is because over and over again, this heart of God is communicated in the movie. At one point, God says to Mackenzie, we're just trying to heal you. We're trying to heal this pain if you'll let us. At another point, God says to Mackenzie, I want to heal that wound that's growing inside you and between us. And if you want to know why this is so significant, and one of the best lines of the movie, here's what God says. When all you see is your pain, you lose sight of God. When all you see is your pain, you lose sight of God. Do you know how many times I've had that happen in my life, or I've seen that happen in the lives of others? Do you know how many people no longer follow God in any way because of their pain? Do you know that this is the number one thing that takes people away from God? Number one, nothing is close to it. People aren't talked out of their faith in God because of some scientist. People are wounded, and they get stuck, and the pain becomes all they focus on, and they lose sight of God in their pain. So, and over and over again in the movie, God is just trying to bring healing to those wounded spots. And that's what I love. And I want you to wrestle with this. I want you to understand this. To believe that God wants to heal your pain. That's what I want you to understand. God wants to bring healing to your pain. Do you believe that? Do you believe that the God of the universe knows exactly how you're feeling and cares about the pain that you're living through, the pain that you carried in here today? Do you believe that? Do you think your pain matters to God? Over and over again in the Bible, especially in the book of Psalms, you read verses like this. Do you know that God is the one who heals the brokenhearted? It's what he's promised to do. And do you know what happens? Do you know what God does? I mean, God is everywhere, right? It's this theological concept called omnipresence, that God is everywhere. He is present everywhere at once. I can only be present one place at a time, and sometimes I'm there physically and not any other way, right? But God can be everywhere at once. And yet something special happens when we're wounded. Look what he does. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Well, the truth is the Lord is close at all times, but something different happens when you're in pain. It's like he moves even closer. And I don't know what that means. I just know that he says it. That your pain matters to him. And when you think about it, I mean, I was reading this book on trauma, childhood trauma, a few years ago, and there was a point that really got stuck in my mind. Look at this chart. You're growing in your faith or in your life, and then all of a sudden you go through some kind of trauma, and the trauma is different, right? We all measure pain differently. You go through something that's really painful for you, and what happens is that we internalize that wrong message into our mind at that moment, and then we get stuck, and we stop moving forward. Do you know that developmentally what I read is that you get stuck at the age at which the trauma occurred? Which is so true. I was a young boy when my trauma occurred, and when I finally started really feeling my emotions again in my mid-40s, I felt like a child. I felt like a child. because that's where I was stuck at. You get stuck at the age in which the trauma occurred. And even though I grew physically and I grew mentally, I didn't grow emotionally. And many, many times people stop growing spiritually at the moment of their trauma. And do you think God likes anything on this slide? Do you think God likes this? So do you see why he is a healing God? Does it make sense? Because he loves you so much, and his plan for you is so much better than what the world offers you. He longs to heal us because all healthy things grow. All healthy things grow. And our God cares so much about you and the pain that you have that nobody else even knows about, that he wants to bring his healing love into those wounded parts, bring healing to those areas so that you can be the person he made you to be. It's what I love about the movie. It's what I love about the Bible. It's what I love about my God. He wants to do this for you because he wants you to experience words like joy. When was the last time you felt joyful? He wants you to experience hope and his overwhelming love and peace. The Bible actually says his peace is so great that it can't even be described. Do you know that kind of peace? Indescribable peace. Do you know that? He wants to put you on this path, not the path that someone in your past put you on. Here is one of my favorite healing promises in the Bible. Psalm 23:3, he, God, restores my soul. That's a promise. God is willing to restore your wounded soul if you will let him. So do I really believe that God wants to restore my soul? You got to wrestle with that. And then the key is really this. Letter B, you got to let God's truth replace the lies. Because a lie is what gets us stuck. That belief that we internalize. That's what gets us stuck, and we got to get the lie out of there and replace it with the truth, and his promises are just so powerful for that. So I only gave you part of the formula earlier. I gave you the A, B, and C, but there's more to the formula. You know, there's A, B, and C. Something happens, a belief gets formed. There's emotional consequence. Pay attention to your emotions because they'll trigger a notice to you to dig it for that belief. But you can dispute and exchange it, and that's what happens in the movie. Mackenzie is stuck because he has this belief that he is responsible for the death of his daughter. And so God walks him through this healing process where he disputes that thought, and then he exchanges it for the truth. And the dispute sounds like this: I'm not responsible for my daughter's death. God is not disappointed in me. Not only that, God sees everything I've ever done and still loves me relentlessly. And when you take out that old message and you put in the new message rooted in what God has promised you, his whole life is changed. His whole life is changed. Because our beliefs create the emotions that we feel, and the emotions impact so much of how we live. And what I believe to the core of who I am is that the key to your life and mine are the promises of God. They are the key to disputing all our negative thoughts, which is why I sound like a broken record, and I say this all the time. When you're in pain, go to one book of the Bible, the book of Psalms. It's the biggest book. It's right in the middle. If you have a Bible, it's the easiest to find because it's the biggest right in the middle, and you just flip pretty much like that, and you're going to hit Psalms. And just start reading, and don't stop. And just read until God shows you what he's promised you, and let his promises begin to undo the lies. Because that's what's going to happen. He's done it for me over and over again, over and over and over again, and he will do that for anyone. So what does it look like? So in one of the worst painful moments of my life, I had already learned the promise from Psalm 23:3 that God restores my soul. I knew it. He'd restored my soul in the past. So when I was really, really hurting, I knew that the only way I was going to be restored was not by watching more Netflix or eating more chocolate, as tempting as that sounded. I knew that the only restorer of souls is God. Alcohol doesn't ever restore souls, right? We all agree on that? drug use, porn, video games, nobody's soul has ever been restored by any of these artificial substitutes. But God restores souls. So in the worst moment of my life, I grabbed my Bible. Every single morning I woke up and I read in Psalms. And every single day I just kept reading and reading and reading, giving God the opportunity to put his promises in my mind in the middle of pain. And I came across this verse one day. It says, they even spoke against God himself, saying, God can't give us food in the wilderness, which is such a fascinating thing. So in the context, what was happening is talking about the nation of Israel. God had supernaturally brought the nation of Israel out of slavery in Egypt, and he was bringing them to the land he promised to give them. And yet the Israelites complained constantly. And so at one point, they're hungry and they want meat. And so they say, literally the verse right before after this says, oh sure, God can bring water out of a rock, but he can't give us the food to eat. Did you hear what you just said? He can bring water out of a rock. Can you bring water out of a rock? Can you do that? Let's go outside. Let's see. How many of you, we'll find a rock and you tap it and let water start flowing out of it, okay? And then we can all have a drink. Because that's what God did through Moses, okay? So they're like, yeah, he can do that miracle, but he can't give us meat to eat. Isn't that ridiculous? It made me laugh when I read it. And then it made me think. And again, that's all you're looking for when you're reading the Bible. I tell you this all the time. You're trying to read for something to strike you. That struck me. Because it surprised me. That's all you're looking for. Because that's God now speaking to you. That's God now speaking to you. When you're reading the Bible and something just surprises you or catches your attention, it's like, wow. I mean, those two words just jumped off the page at me. God can't. And then I started wondering, because I wasn't feeling very happy at the time. My emotions were really, really, really raw. And I started thinking, well, I wonder what I'm thinking about God. And I started making a list of the things I thought God can't do. God can't bring good from this. And I just started being honest. What am I thinking God can't do? God can't heal this pain. God can't give me peace. God can't restore my soul. God can't love me after what I've done. God can't guide me or provide for me. He can't use me anymore. Can't imagine why I felt depressed. What a shocker. See, it's not your painful situations that are creating the emotions that you feel. It's the belief that you have in your head. I was just like the Israelites. Just like the Israelites. Oh, sure, God can bring water out of a rock, but he can't bring healing into my heart. The good news is we get to control what we put in our mind, right? And I kept reading in Psalms, and I read verses like this: the righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to the rescue once in a while. Isn't that last phrase so valuable? Once in a while, he'll do something maybe. Is that what he says in the verse? Anybody? He says, each time. That's the promise. The promise is not conditional upon, here's the crazy thing about it. Our God, when he sees you in pain, is on the edge of his throne, is like, I'm ready. And you know what the crazy thing is? I think the thing that's going to bother me the most when I get to heaven, one of the things that will bother me the most is how many times the Father was sitting on the edge of his throne waiting to help me, and I never even asked him. I never even asked him. Can you imagine how many times we're going to see that replayed in our lives? Because the promise is rescue each time. But that's not the experience, because we don't turn toward him. We turn towards every other alternative. And then I read this verse. They don't fear bad news because they confidently trust the Lord to carry them. And I read promise after promise after promise like this. How many of you are afraid of bad news? Well, you can build a faith so strong that even when bad news comes, you don't panic or you're not afraid because you know God will care for you. Is that the kind of faith you have? Even when bad news comes along, you just have so much confidence in God that he will care for you. That's what he wants to build. So I made a note. Since I control what I put in my mind, I started writing these sentences out, and this was a key page. I read this page in my prayer journal over and over and over and over again. I wrote these words: God will bring good from this. God will heal this pain. God will give me peace. God will restore my soul. He loves me after what I've done. He will guide me, provide for me, and still use me in any way he wants. And all of a sudden, as I put the promises of God in my mind, not the discouraging thoughts I had in there, then the result was peace and joy and hope, and he began to heal what only he could heal. Remember, this is the key word to your whole Christian life. If you have no experiences with God, it's because this is not present. Jesus said it takes faith to encounter God. So how do you bring faith into your painful moments? Faith means you thank God before you see it. You want to know what faith sounds like? It sounds like this. Father, thank you that you are healing this pain, that you're bringing good from this, and that you're restoring my soul. Before I even see any of that, thank you that you are. Because he made these promises to you. And if he will lie about any of his promises, then he is completely worthless. But he cannot lie about any of them. Every promise he's made you is true, and they're the basis for living a life with him where we experience him. Some of you, that's the prayer to pray, right? That's the prayer that you need to start praying. A faith-based prayer that says, God, before I even see how, thank you that you are healing this pain, that you're bringing good from this, and that you're restoring my soul. Because you promised you would. And then watch what he does. Every time he sees any amount of faith, he moves towards it. So my question as we finish up here today is, do you feel stuck? If you do, you got you got an easy or hard choice in front of you. You don't have to do this work of digging up your emotions and paying attention to them, but you need to remember buried feelings, do they die? If you bury your feelings, do they die? Do they just go away magically? Oh no, they begin to poison you from the inside out. You will never, ever, ever be healthy and ignore the gift that God gave you of your emotions. You cannot be healthy without it. So you got to really do the hard work. Get a chart, like I said, Google it, it's free, you can get one. And think about, what am I feeling? And then what are the beliefs that are creating those emotions? I mean, this is hard work. Watching Netflix is so much easier. Going home and eating that giant jar of peanut M&Ms I have, that is easy. Easy. But to do this is hard. But to get unstuck, it's the only way. And then if you're really in pain today, I cannot tell you enough. How many times this great God of love met me in the morning in that book and gave me just the slightest bit of hope. And when you're in pain, that's what you need. Let him speak to you through his words. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish up today. If you are struggling with something that you carried in here this morning, and it's so many of us are. I mean, there are people that are really doing great and life is good and they're not stuck, but for most Americans, we're stuck. And many of you, when I asked you, what point did you get stuck? You had a thought in your mind. You know when it happened. You have multiple stuck messages and stuck moments. And I'm asking you to pray that prayer of faith this morning, to say to Jesus, before I can even see what you're doing, thank you that you are bringing good out of those moments. And picture that moment and thank him that he's bringing good out of it. And thank him that he is healing that wound. And thank him that he is restoring your soul because he promised to. And maybe you're just exploring your faith with us and or watching online and you still don't even know if you believe in this God and what you believe. And he is a healing, loving God, and Jesus demonstrated that. He came to earth to give his life on a cross for all of us so that any human being who wants his gift of love and relationship can have it. And maybe that's the next step for you spiritually. With your head bowed, you can say something like this. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I need you in my life. So with the faith I have, I'm coming to you today. Make your home inside of me. In Jesus' name, amen. As we finish, I want to ask you all to grab this little card out of your program. I know I ask you to do it every week. And if you prayed that prayer, you asked for his gift of forgiveness or renewed your commitment, let us know about it. If you have today, this may be a big one for you. You have something you want us to pray about, put it down here. We have a team of people that will pray for you today. On your way out, don't forget to take a meal, to think about someone you can serve in Jesus' name. That's what we are servants in this world. So take a meal and go serve someone. And thanks for coming. We'll see you in 2 weeks.